Hi, this is Nancy Peske, the co-author of Raising a Sensory Smart Child, the definitive handbook for helping your child with sensory processing issues. And I'm also known as the Sensory Smart Parent. I have a blog called Sensory Smart Parent. I wanted to do a video chat today with Jennifer L.W. Fink, who has a marvelous blog called buildingboys.net. She's the co-creator of the podcast On Boys, Real Talk About Parenting, Teaching, and Reaching Tomorrow's Men. She's also an award-winning freelance writer and the mother of 4 boys ages 13 to 21. So I wanted to talk to Jennifer today because she has a lot of insights into helping our boys balance their screen time. So Jennifer, welcome, and thank you for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's interesting because your audience is parents that are looking for information about sensory processing disorders. And I think a lot of the parents who are in contact with me don't necessarily realize yet that that may be an issue for their boys.
Yeah. I know that more than ever before, we're getting parents to know what sensory issues are, but it's still a long haul because it's not, sensory processing disorders and sensory issues are only in the diagnostic manual under a secondary characteristic of autism. But research from 2016 shows that there are brain differences between kids who have sensory processing disorder and are not on the autism spectrum, and kids who have it and are on the spectrum. So it's going to take a while for things to catch up. Mm-hmm. But yes, a lot of our kids are dealing with sensory issues, and I actually wrote a chapter in the update of Raising a Sensory Smart Child. This is the updated version.
I love the new look, by the way.
Yeah, so do I. And it's, we wrote this, Lindsay Beal and I wrote this back in 2004. It was first published in 2005. This is actually the second update. And one of the things we did in this version was add a chapter on technology and kids, because there's no escaping it, is there?
No, and it becomes a topic of conversation and worry anytime you get parents together. This is something that every single parent I know is concerned about to some degree or another.
Yeah. And you had a great blog piece that really caught my eye about how you worked with your son to have a good balance so that it's not, I am watching the screen at all times. There's a carryover into everyday life. And Could you talk a little about that?
So the post you're referring to, I'm pretty sure is the one called Why I'm Not Worried About Screen Time.
Yeah.
All about the provocative titles there.
Yeah.
And what I'm talking about in this, I had shared a picture on social media earlier this year, and it was my recently turned 13-year-old son got the idea to stud his bike tires because we live in Wisconsin. It was January, it was winter. And if he studs his bike tires, then he could ride on the river, which was heavily frozen at that time. And so this picture of him with his drill and all these screws that he's got in this tire. And he and a friend had both been working on this. And so I took this picture and I posted it and got a lot of comments about, I love his creativity and his motivation. And really, it was applause for the fact that he was doing something besides being on screens.
Yeah.
But as I looked at the photo, I realized that the hat he was wearing in the photo, the logo is 3D Machines. 3D Machines is a YouTube channel that my son follows extensively. And it is a guy in his 20s that does a lot of, mechanical stuff. My kid loves that. And in 7th grade, he doesn't get a lot of that in school. So he sort of feeds that need for information through YouTube channels. So he had that hat on. He's constantly taking ideas from that channel into his real life. Mm-hmm. And I really I shouldn't even say that because I don't necessarily think technology is separate from real life. I think that's a false separation that we've made.
Yeah.
And then further, if you look really closely at this picture, you can see his phone laying on the ground in the background because this thing that he is doing in real time was inspired by a different YouTube video. And so he and his friend started this adventure online on screens and really by themselves took it out into the physical world. And it led to great interest and learning. He learned, first of all, that the way he put the screws on was not the optimal way. It was too many. It didn't work. Had to come back and revise what he'd done. Ultimately had great success and pleasure in what he did and got to ride his bike on the river.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and I think a lot of times when parents read these articles about screen times, there's two things. Number one, they're reading about neurotypical kids, and neurotypical kids might have an easier time being off screen because when kids have sensory issues, often first they're looking at visual stimulation. They enjoy the visual stimulation. Secondly, they tend to learn best and communicate best in a multisensory way. So you and I are talking here, and I'm going to put some subtitles on this video when we post it, because what I learned very early on with my son is that he learns best when he's seeing a video and seeing words on the screen. It's that double thing. So you've got the auditory, you've got the visual, you've got the subtitles. And that's really common. And we don't necessarily think that way, that maybe the reason kids are attracted to screens is because it's how they learn best, right? It gives them more options. So that's the first thing. We're the over the top, oh my gosh, screen time's gonna, fry your child's brain stuff is not accounting for that. And secondly, it's not accounting for the fact that our kids are always going to be on screens. Technology is going to be there. When your son goes to middle school, I'll bet you anything that he's looking at a smart board, and then, they take out the Chromebooks and all of that. So when we talk about screen time, I think that what we really need to talk about is the different ways we use screen time and how we bring it out into the world. So how do we get them to go from the screen, socializing, to socializing in real life? From playing online to playing in the natural world. So did your son start biking before he got into the?
He did. He did. In some ways, I am a little hesitant to use him as an example because he's on this generation that is sort of on the cusp of. He was born a little bit before kids were completely immersed in the digital world and in technology. I know you've talked about how much technology has changed just since you published this book originally in 2005 or 6, right? So my son, he's the youngest of my 4, but he grew up in a family where there was also always doing of things outside. So it wasn't that he had the total immersion in screens and then I had to take it out. For him, this came pretty naturally. In a way, I'm fortunate. In other ways, you could also say we helped create those conditions. Yeah. And for us, part of it has been, I think it's so important for parents to look carefully at what their kids are doing on screens. So often parents assume that it's bad for them, whatever they're doing. And if you remove that fear, remove that judgment, it's easier to see how what they're doing might be feeding something in them. Feeding skill development or a need for information, needing some kind of a need. And if you can see that, then you can also see ways that you may be able to help your child use those skills in other contexts.
Yes, I agree that sometimes what they're getting from being on screen is not what you think it is. So they're not necessarily playing a video game. They might be watching a YouTube video that's how to, or that's explaining something to them that they want to learn about. It could be that they're socializing. I remember discovering when my son was in middle school that he could talk to the other players when he was playing a game. I had no idea. And it was all, I looked at what he was talking about, and it was very positive. They were actually talking about all the boys went to the same school and they were on the same server. And they were talking about a boy at school that they were worried about because he had a lot of anxiety. That's what their conversation was outside of just the gameplay. So it's really important not to assume and not to come in with that fear of what's he doing, and he's spending too much time on screen. It could be that he's supporting another kid. It could be that he's learning something. He could be supplementing what he's learning in school by finding something that is easier for him to learn from.
Mm-hmm.
My kid is not a textbook learning kid. I'm not either. I could never learn from textbooks. Right? And he has trouble with auditory processing. So he can be engaged by a lecturer, but he won't remember anything. And if he tries to take notes, that's not going to work, because now he's focused on the notes and now he missed what they're saying. Right. So it's really important not to assume. I agree.
My son, at 13, he was playing Fortnite in the other room. And if you follow early teen boys at all over the last year, Fortnite became this huge craze. Mm-hmm. If you're not familiar with it, it looks like a first-person shooter game. The whole idea is that players are dropped onto this island. There's 100 players. It's battle royale style, and basically you want to be the last one standing. Mm-hmm. Kind of like a Hunger Games idea in that sense. So just looking at what they're doing, it's very easy to think, this is stupid. This is a waste of time. Mm-hmm. And a lot of parents do. It just so happened that night I was sitting in the other room, and I had recently been working on an education article for a client. Uh-huh. And in this game, like you were saying with your son, you can connect with other players via headphones and talk as you're playing together. And typically players do work together in groups or squads. Mm-hmm. And it really hit me that there are these, in the education world, people call them 4 critical 21st century competencies. Mm-hmm. Because people are increasingly recognizing, facts, we can get those from our phones at any point in time. Right. What are going to be the skills that our kids need now and in the future? Mm-hmm. And the 4 crucial 21st century competencies are collaboration, critical thinking, mm-hmm. creativity, mm-hmm. and communication. And as I listened to my son playing this quote unquote stupid game, he was honing those skills. Yeah. He's learning to work together in teams, how to identify a goal. How do we as a group work together towards that goal? Mm-hmm. And in a lot of ways, what I heard him doing are what I hear myself doing when I'm working with colleagues on a group project via Skype, via Zoom. Yeah. Yeah. Good point. And, with the creativity, my son played a lot of Minecraft in middle school. There was a boy who had a server, and so he actually knew all the kids in his little Minecraft world, which I think is a good way to protect our kids, is to make sure they all know each other. That they're not playing with who knows who. Mm-hmm. You have to be on top of that. And the kids were helping each other out. They were collaborating to build things. And at one point, they found that one of the boys had flooded somebody's house. So my son and another boy bailed out the house. They fixed the house in Minecraft. Now, when I looked at it, it just looked like the silliest game ever. They're going chip, 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 chip. Right. It's very simple. Everything's blocky. But I realized, he's being creative. He's being social. He's definitely collaborating and communicating through Minecraft. And in fact, he now teaches Minecraft to kids. Did you know that Minecraft is experiencing a resurgence right now? Oh, really? It is the 10th anniversary of Minecraft. Uh-huh. And so it was a couple weeks ago, actually. They must have, done a reissue or a re-release or something. I was not home with my children. I was attending a confirmation party when my son, my 16-year-old, sent me a message and said, "Hey, Mom, I charged like $7 to your account because he wanted to download Minecraft." I'm like, that was weird. Meanwhile, the 16-year-old whose confirmation I'm at, he comes to his mom, "Hey, Mom, can I get your credit card number? Because he wanted to do Minecraft." So these things are cyclical, but I've seen the same thing, such creativity.
Oh,
and
yeah.
When my son was younger, he was even getting basic math concepts for Minecraft, keeping track of, the blocks and all of that, and even some basic science stuff in terms of the combinations of materials you had to put together. Like,
Right.
these things carry forward.
Right. And another one, my son is very into Pokemon and Pokemon Go. Took me a while to get, it's not Pokemon, it's Pokemon. Okay.
Good job, Mom.
And Pokemon Go gets you outdoors, right? And there are certain Pokemon that are more common when it's overcast weather. So he's been catching a lot of those lately.
Oh, today's the day.
Yeah, today's the day. Because I too am in Wisconsin and we've had quite an overcast spring. And so he's been playing it with me. And he's not the kind of person who would like to go on a walk in the woods, but boy, we can do it with Pokemon Go. So that's another bridge to getting kids outdoors. I feel like it's the balance that's important.
Yes.
When kids only want to be on screen, we need to get more information about why that is, right?
Yes.
Why are they so resistant to getting together in person with the other kids from school who are playing the game? Or, why are they resistant to going out in the woods? Sometimes it's a matter of, they need sunglasses. Maybe they need to get used to all the sounds in the woods.
They don't like the bugs in the woods.
Bugs. I can hear the bug sounds, how do I won't get bitten by a mosquito, right? And so just even talking these things through with the kid can really help them. But I always say we need to meet kids where they are to get them where we want them to go. And one of the things parents do is you ask a question. First of all, you assume, right? We were talking about that. And secondly, even if you don't assume and you ask a question, why are you doing this or not doing that? It's easy to jump to responding to their answer with, well, that's ridiculous. What are you talking about, right? That is a negative reaction. And I think it's important for us to develop the habit of slowing down and just taking it in, no matter how out there the answer is, to just go, oh, interesting. So you're concerned about the bugs, and just use that mirroring language.
And even the tone we use sometimes when we're asking the why.
Yeah.
We have to watch that. It can be very, it can sound very accusatory, especially to the ears of our children.
Yeah.
So trying very hard to have a curiosity, to be asking from a place of curiosity rather than judgment. And that takes interior work for us as parents. And that's where the hard part comes in, if you ask me.
Yeah, because we want that for ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so we have to be very mindful of this. And but before we finish up, I also just want to say that we've been talking about video games, we've been talking about YouTube and all that, and I think we also have to touch on social media. My son never wanted to be on Facebook. His impression and that of his friends was, why would you go on Facebook? That's just where people bully each other. Interesting. Right? And so he's gotten onto some social media like Snapchat, because in school, the teachers actually want them on Snapchat, which is to do assignments. But other than that, he'll go on YouTube, but he really wants to have those boundaries. He wants the boundaries of, I'll respond to the YouTuber about, what the YouTuber is doing or saying. And it's always very polite and it's always very respectful. So I think this idea that all of our kids are out there on social media bullying each other is a false one.
Mm-hmm. And it is a difficult question for both parents and for kids. There is pressure to be on social media. There's pressure not to be on social media. Mm-hmm. This is a great example of why it's so important to know your child and have conversations. Different kids have different reasons for wanting to be on or not on social media channels.
Yes.
There is another writer and mom that I know, and I feel comfortable sharing her name because she's written about this. Judy Kettler has written about her 10-year-old son Max's fascination with G-Tramp. Are you familiar with G-Tramp at all?
No.
Most people aren't unless your kid is into it. But it's this whole, basically it's a subculture where kids, mostly early teen kids, mostly boys, spend time working on trampoline tricks, on backyard trampolines.
Okay.
But we're talking really high level stuff, like a quadruple backflip followed by something else. I only knew about this community because my kid discovered it on YouTube as well. But her son got interested in this, and he ended up on Instagram. He was only 9 when he got his first Instagram account, but he did it with his mom's approval because she figured she would rather have him get on young, where she could still guide him more than, if he's 16 and getting on, and helped create some guidelines together. And he connected with a lot of G-Trampers via Instagram. These kids give each other feedback via videos, via pictures they post. They're in communication. And in many ways, these connections also have turned into real world meetups. These kids connect online. It's a small enough community that you may not have somebody in your neighborhood or in your town doing this, but there are others doing it. And so it allows some kids to find a sense of connection that they can't locally. And often those do turn into real world relationships.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that people don't understand, particularly as the kids get towards middle school and high school, is the way that we do school in this country right now is really stressful. So much more stressful than when I was a kid. My son went to the same middle school that I did, and I followed him for a day. I could not believe what that experience was. So different from mine, so different. It's, let's talk about what was on the last test, what's going to be on the next test. Let's talk about exactly how, which of the 4 multiple choice question answers is correct. And I just remember school being much more relaxed and creative. And so our kids are in these school experiences that are very intense and anxiety provoking. And they come home and, like the rest of us, they want to relax, right? And so as our schools change, I hope to see less an extreme with the focus on tests and, when you get to college, when you get to college,
right?
Kind of pressure. But I think as parents, we have to remember that that's there too. And I feel like a lot of the bullying online, offline, has to do with the pressure cooker of school. And so when we acknowledge that and we talk with our kids about that and listen to them instead of saying, oh, everybody finds school difficult, actually go to school, and shadow them for a day, ask them questions about it, because I think we can underestimate how challenging it is for them.
That's a really good point. And it goes back to assumptions again.
Yeah.
Often as parents, we assume that our kids are just wasting time online. They might simply be trying to zone out after a really busy day. We assume that if they're on social media, it's bullying. Sometimes it's not. For a lot of kids, social media is a lifeline. It's how you find your people who can support you. So we can't assume.
Right. And I think that's the big takeaway is we can't assume, and we can help our kids go from screen to real life, and sometimes even real life to screen, to help them to find the videos that make their homework easier to do, for example, to express their creativity. A lot of kids really are on social media or in video games because they want to express their creativity. They feel like they can't do that within school. So I think we're very much on the same page about this. And I hope that anyone watching this is a little less freaked out by all of this coverage of screen time as being negative, because the truth is There's not a lot of research. Screen time is changing constantly. Screens are going to be a part of their life. And the research that is done tends to be biased, biased towards certain kinds of people, and they're looking for negative outcomes when they're doing the research. So if we take a breath and we connect with our kids, I think we'll get to a better balance and a better relationship with technology for our kids.
And better connection with our children. When we make screens a point of contention, that creates disconnection in our relationships, which is the exact opposite of what our children need.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing I think that is absolutely crucial to mention is our role as the adults in role modeling.
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah.
We have to
put it down. Yeah.
Right? And talk about the ways we use technology. Same thing. Our kids might just see that I'm in front of a computer most hours of the day.
Yeah.
But I'm doing a lot of different things doing that. So talking about how we use technology and integrate it into our lives, and then role modeling times when we are not on our phones or not on technology, or now I am using a skill that I learned about online. Mm-hmm. That's important as well. Our kids always learn more from what they see us doing than from what we tell them.
Yeah, that's
better or worse.
Yeah. So we have to be mindful of it.
Yes.
Well, thank you, Jennifer. This has been a really great conversation. I hope people find it helpful in helping their kids find that balance and keeping good communication going between parent and child.
Thank you. This is an important topic, and I know parents will appreciate this.
Yeah. So I just want to remind everyone that Jennifer is at buildingboys.net. Mm-hmm. She's on Twitter at JLWF and at Building Boys. And on Facebook, there's a Building Boys page, as well as a private Facebook group called Building Boys. So I'm sure those are pretty easy to find, and really love your blog,
Oh, thank you.
Stories. So, well, thank you for being with me today. And I hope your boys are just doing well and thriving.
Me too.